stroll, I have to think of that, fundraiser, and it was a beautiful day, and judging by the crowd, it appeared to be very successful, so, thank you.
Thank you, and you were very fortunate to get a beautiful day this month.
I know. I even jogged.
Good for you. Personnel, Mr. Regomo?
Thank you. The Personnel Committee met on May 4th, 2016. Before I start, we have 7 items. One of them is being removed from the list, number 5. So I don't know, Mr. Cox, is there anything else I need to say to that?
No, that covers it, Mr. Regomo. I think you just don't move it and move on to the next item.
Thank you. Very good. The first motion is to approve the amended settlement between the Pennridge Education Association and the Pennridge Board of School Directors effective July 1, 2014 through July 30, 2018. Or pardon me, June 30th.
Do we have a second to the motion to approve the collective bargaining agreement? Thank you, Mrs. Smith. Moved and seconded to approve the collective bargaining agreement. Comments or questions from board members? Mrs. Danis-Clemens.
Since this preceded my time on the board and involves discussions, this is based on discussions that I was not privy to, I'm going to abstain from this vote.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to comment? If not, we'll move to the vote. This too will be a roll call vote. Mrs. Cron?
Mrs. Miller?
Aye.
Mrs. Danis-Clemens?
Abstain.
Mr. Casper?
Yes.
Mrs. Yardley?
Yes.
Mrs. Cullen?
Yes.
Mrs. Schmidt?
Yes.
Mr. Kraus?
Yes.
Mr. Regomo?
Yes.
Dr. Yarnell?
Yes. Thank you. The amendment is approved. Mr. Regomo?
Thank you. The second motion is to approve agreement between Bayetta Staffing and the Pennridge School District to provide per diem professional nursing services. Agreement reviewed by the solicitor.
Do we have a second to that motion for Bayetta? Thank you, Mrs. Schmidt. Moved and seconded to approve this agreement with Bayetta Staffing. Comments or questions from board members? If not, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 9-0. Mr. Regola.
Third motion is to approve a staffing agreement between the Bucks County Intermediate Unit and the Pennridge School District to approve the services of a qualified individual to serve as an acting principal for an interim period of time. Agreement reviewed by solicitor.
Do we have a second to the staffing agreement?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Cullen. Moved and seconded to approve this staffing agreement. Comments or questions from board members? If not, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 9-0. Mr. Regola.
The fourth motion is to approve a revised job description for school van driver.
Do we have a second to the revised job description?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Schmidt. Moved and seconded to approve this job description revision. Comments or questions from board members? If not, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 9-0. Mr. Regola.
The fifth motion is to approve revised amendment A to the Source for Teachers contract.
Thank you. Do we have a second to that, the revised amendment, addendum?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Smith. Moved and seconded for the addendum for the Source for Teachers. Comments or questions from board members? Not. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 9-0. Mr. Regola.
The last motion is to approve Sean Dalbert as treasurer for the 2016-2017 school year.
Do we have a second to that motion? Thank you, Mrs. Danis-Clemens. Moved and seconded to approve Mr. Dalbert as the treasurer for the upcoming school year. Comments or questions from board members? If not, I will comment that this is something the state school code requires, not the appointment of Mr. Dalbert, but the appointment of a treasurer. But we appreciate you acting in that role. Thank you. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 9-0. The next item, Mr. Regoma.
The next Personnel Committee meeting is scheduled for September 14, 2016.
Thank you. Policy Review Committee, Mrs. Miller.
Thank you, Dr. Yarnell. The Policy Review Committee met on May 6th. I have one motion to recommend first reading of the following revised policy, Policy 006.
Do we have a second to that motion to revise the policy?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Casper. Moved and seconded to approve the first reading. Comments or questions from board members? Not. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 9-0. Mrs. Miller?
The next Policy Review Committee is scheduled for September 14th, 2016.
Thank you. Would you please continue with the Upper Bucks County Technical School Committee?
Thank you. The Upper Bucks County Technical School Committee did not meet. We're meeting on May 19th at 7:30 p.m. at the Upper Bucks County Technical School.
Thank you. We'll move on to the Technology Committee. Mr. Kraus?
Thank you, Dr. Yarnell. The Technology Committee did not meet in May, and we will schedule our next meeting as needed.
Thank you. The Act 48, the Act 48 Committee is next. Mrs. Davis-Clement?
Thank you, Dr. Yarnell. The Act 48 committee has not met since our last school board meeting, and it will be scheduled as needed.
Thank you. The Ad Hoc Fundraising Committee. Mrs. Schmidt?
Ad hoc fundraising hasn't met, but they're scheduled for a meeting on May 25th.
Thank you. Old business. Seeing and hearing none, we'll move on to announcements. The next regularly scheduled school board meeting is scheduled for June 20th, 2016 at 7 p.m. in this room, Pennridge High School. I would note that that's the final budget meeting that we will be presuming to pass the final budget. An executive session was held on May 2nd, 2016 for the purpose of personnel matters. There will be an executive session following tonight's meeting, and it will be for the purpose both of personnel matters and a confidential student matter. At this point, we're back to public comment. Yes, Mrs. Herring.
Diane Herron, Hilltown Township. In regards to the superintendent's report tonight and the donation made from the band, I wanted to make the board aware, if you're not, because it's sort of out of character that we're so far ahead of the curve. We have hopefully started down the road of gaining back spectrum of sound. And successfully at this point registered the show as a cavalcade show. And currently, we have more than 15 bands signed up to attend that evening. We are currently showing as the largest cavalcade show on the circuit for the fall. So I'm confident and hopeful that, being that we've never done this at Hillman Field, we can find a way to start talking earlier, sooner rather than later, so that we can make sure all of the potential things that might change versus having done it at Papiota for 35 years. We meet with the district's expectation, as well as we are trying to invite a guest band. So we're going to be reaching out to Ms. DeBona to try to help facilitate that, because it would be a military band and they would require some certain information from the district in advance. But I just thought it would be important to bring this up because, as originally noted, the donation was in turn to be slightly higher, and we're hoping that if we are able to pull off spectrum to the degree that we were in the past, that donation for next year would be higher than it was this year. Thank you.
Mrs. Herring, just a question.
Sure.
You didn't give a date. Do you know what the date?
Yes, it's set for the last Saturday in October this year, which is a slight change. We've always had the first Saturday. This year it's October 29th, and we've moved it based on actually the SATs. We didn't want so many band students take SATs. We didn't want to get into that again, so we had the opportunity to make that change this year with Cavalcade, and we took advantage of it.
Thank you, and thank you for the heads up. Anyone else? Questions from the press? If none, thank you very much for coming. This meeting is adjourned. Good night, Mr. Kraus.